Hello, this is Catherine Solheim. In the previous lesson, I talked about the impact of having unmanageable debt. Now let's consider some strategies to deal with and decrease debt. Here are some possible strategies. Depending on the severity of the amount owed, these strategies will be helpful for some and not for others. So you see these listed, and we'll go over the strategies in the next few slides. The very basic practice of using a spending plan or a budget comes into play when trying to reduce debt or cope with unmanageable levels of debt. If individuals do not have a spending plan, creating and implementing one will help with debt management. This allows them to see areas in which they could reduce expenses, or if they might need to increase their income if possible. They might also consider whether or not they have assets that could be sold to generate money to pay down debt. We went over spending plans in an earlier module, so should be just a refresher. A spending plan is used to determine the balance between inflow or income and outflow or expenses. The resulting net cash flow will show whether or not an individual or family is living within their means. If the cash flow is negative, this means they are not. Most likely, credit is being used to cover monthly expenses. That adds to debt in the short term and unmanageable debt in the long term. The first question to ask is, how large is the negative cash flow? Is increasing income or reducing expenses possible? If yes, then those adjustments can be made. The plan can be implemented and monitored monthly to see if it's working, or to see if further changes need to be made. For your convenience, a worksheet that could be used to create a spending plan has been included in this module. An important strategy to handle debt is to contact creditors. They may be willing to work with borrowers if it means they will recoup some of their money. One option they might offer is a modified payment plan or a reduced payment plan that will work within the individual's spending plan. Being proactive by making these contacts at an early stage when debt begins to look unmanageable is advised. Keep in mind that if accounts have already been sent to collection, lenders may not be willing to negotiate. If the level of debt is too great and consumers have tried budgeting on their own and it didn't work, credit counseling is a good option. Credit counselors work with clients to manage their money and debt. They are able to help with budgeting and teach skills needed to manage. An advantage of working with a credit counselor is that they are able to review an individual's whole financial situation and create a plan specifically for that person. Make sure to work with a reputable credit counselor or credit counseling agency. The National Foundation for Credit Counseling provides specific guidelines for evaluating whether or not a person or organization is reputable. Be aware of nonprofit organizations that charge high fees, as they may not be working in the consumer's best interest. Reputable organizations may still charge fees, but they are often based on the ability to pay and do not put the individual at increased risk. Two well-established credit counseling organizations in Minnesota are Family Means and Lutheran Social Services. The websites are listed on the slide. After a credit counselor thoroughly reviews an individual's financial situation and there is no other option, they may suggest a debt management plan. A debt management plan will enable the client to deposit money each month to the credit counseling organization, who in turn makes payments toward unsecured debt such as student loans and credit cards. It is important to note that these plans are not for everyone, and a person shouldn't sign up until they thoroughly understand their situation and that there is no other option. It should be noted that some plans can stay in place for 48 months, 4 years, or longer, so it's important that individuals know the length of their debt management plan. Also, it's important to know that an agreement not to use or seek credit while on the plan may be part of the overall plan. With a debt management plan, the credit counselor may be able to negotiate lower interest rates or a waiver of certain fees. But if this is the case, it is important to confirm the arrangement by checking directly with the creditor to ensure that an agreement had been reached and the details of what was agreed upon. It's important for individuals to stay active in this process so that they don't fall victim to fraudulent practices, which can happen through debt management plans created by non-reputable organizations. In a previous module, we talked about the advantages and disadvantages of consolidating student loans. That process may be simpler than consolidating other types of debt. Student loans offer more consumer protection and often are issued by only one lender, for example, the federal government. In contrast, when consolidating other debts such as credit card debt, mortgage debt, consumers may be dealing with multiple lenders and the process may be quite complicated. If an individual reaches a level of unmanageable debt that she or he is considering debt consolidation, this is most likely the case, and we highly recommend that a certified credit counselor or credit counseling organization is the best way to proceed. One way to consolidate debt is taking out a second mortgage or home equity line of credit. However, it should be noted that this typically requires one's home as collateral. Remember, we talked about this as a secured loan. Payments need to be made on the loan on time, every time, because the consequences of getting behind, and once this happens, might result in losing one's home. One of the last resorts for unmanageable debt is bankruptcy. It is a last option because it has long-term consequences. There are two types of bankruptcy that we're going to focus on today, Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. Chapter 7, the most common and most severe form of bankruptcy, refers to a legal process by which one's assets are liquidated, they're sold, and the money from that process is used to pay creditors. To be eligible for Chapter 7, you must meet a means-tested standard to qualify. And remember that not all debt is discharged or forgiven. Child support payments and student loan repayments are typically still the responsibility of the individual, even if bankruptcy occurs. Chapter 7 bankruptcy stays on your credit report for 10 years and can affect whether you can get new credit, whether you could buy a home, get life insurance, and at times get a job. Chapter 13 refers to a legal process by which a 3 to 5 year plan is developed to repay one's debt. Filers retain their assets, so consumers keep their assets and this plan is put in place for repayment. To be eligible for Chapter 13, you must have sufficient monthly income to meet your monthly expenses. Chapter 13 bankruptcy stays on your record for 7 years and can also affect other financial transactions such as credit, home mortgage, insurance, etc. Filing for bankruptcy protects the filer from contact by debt collectors. It halts foreclosures, repossessions, wage garnishments, and utility shutoffs. For both types of bankruptcies, filers must complete a financial management course within 45 days of filing and attend an informational meeting with creditors. There is a fee to file bankruptcy. This is just a brief overview because it's quite a complex legal process, and so be sure to visit the websites that is listed here, and that will tell you more information about bankruptcy. This concludes this presentation. We've touched on some of the basic strategies and resources for dealing with debt. When you're finished, please go to the Moodle site and share your experiences and other resources and strategies you found helpful on the Moodle discussion forum. Thank you for your attention.